All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And good morning, everybody. Wow. We were gabbing it up here in Mark Thompson land right before we went on. You know, I like to crack a little champagne in the morning, a mimosa, chat with Kim.
Kim, how are you?
Chat with my Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
So we're kind of gabbing, you know, as you do. And we looked at the clock on the wall, and we saw, wait a minute, we should be gabbing on the air, not off the air. And so, good morning. It's great to have everybody here.
Morning.
Yeah. The day ahead brings, I wouldn't call it redemption for me. I would call it, what should I call it, Tony? My pronouncements, my forecasts, my predictions of yesterday as to the details of Tucker Carlson. They came to pass. Yeah.
Vindication would be a word, maybe.
What? Say it again, Tony. What?
Is it vindication?
Vindication is exactly the word I was looking for. Yes.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Vindication. Those of you on social media who jumped on me, you don't know what you're talking about. Tucker is Tucker this, Tucker that. You don't know what you're talking about. When we had said yesterday that, here, are these the comments? Or getting right into it? Hang on a second. Let me put my credibility glasses on here.
I could put back later. I thought you wanted me to bring them up. So
yeah, but anyway,
they're ready.
I don't mean to obsess on this. We will get to it. There's, as you know, and if you don't, let me share with you. There's nothing I cherish more than reading hostile, critical comments about me. Oh, I don't know what I'm talking about, blah, 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 blah. So, and by the way, sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's like
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
The truth is that I think I know what I'm talking about most of the time. I'm not BSing anybody, but I'm open to being corrected or being filled in on additional information, as you know. So yesterday, I got all these communications about the Tucker Carlson thing because I'd said that I think that there's more to it than just we've had enough of his, fire hose of lies or however you want to characterize the Tucker Carlson show.
I like how you just did.
So my thought is, at the time yesterday, well, this is about something else. And so Tony put up a short of me kind of going off saying, I can tell you this isn't about the fire hose of lies. It's about something else. And so I made that point, and then I said, because I don't know all the details, but I do know that there's this Abby Grossberg case, there's a possible sexist environment case that's being built, a discrimination case. So you're being accused, Tucker Carlson, of sexism in the workplace. There's actually a paper trail, if you will, with emails and texts, and you're being accused of discrimination in court cases I'm talking about. And I thought that that's where the answer was as to why Tucker was dumped. All I got yesterday on social media was a ration. Now, what is it, Tony? Tony, could you regale us or Kim with a dramatic reading of the criticism, please? Go ahead, Tony.
So, I'm out, dude. You're embarrassing yourself. And then,
Thanks, Tony.
it's a constitutional republic, D-bag.
Oh, that is the worst bust ever. When somebody says it's bad for the democracy, it's not a democracy, Mark. It's a democratic republic. I get it, okay? The point that a person's trying to make is a different one than that. But thank you for that. That's just a weak bust by now. But anyway, go ahead. Yes.
So you are jumping to all these conclusions with no facts, evidence whatsoever. You should
That's
be ashamed of yourself, taken seriously. And then you wrote
That's
so that's
some of these I
amazing.
haven't heard. I was jumping to conclusions without any facts and what?
Well, you responded to it, so.
Oh, I
so
did
you're-
respond to that one.
yeah.
Okay.
You wrote, yeah. You wrote,
oh,
so you're
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So you're jumping to all these conclusions with no facts or evidence whatsoever. You should be ashamed and never taken seriously.
Oh, that's
And then you said, I'll take my apology on the air.
right.
You do not know what you are talking about.
So
Yeah.
the reality is, of course, that's exactly yesterday. What I had pointed out is exactly the reason that Tucker was taken off the air. So we didn't know it. We had a whiff of it. I mean, again, a strong whiff. The speculation wasn't solely mine that it was something else. I think if you know anything about media, it's for the reasons that I was pointing out. I mean, the guy's major successful. He's your main dude. You're not going to dump him if it's just that, oh my gosh, he's just gone too far this time with the racism and the nativism, whatever you want to call it, however you want to slap a new label on it. Anyway, I'm not going to obsess on this, although I do feel it's a sea change in the cable news environment and also in the discourse as it's related to politics and an upcoming election, critical election. So you've got, I think, a real moment, an inflection moment. And so for that reason, it is interesting to see what events informed this decision on the part of Fox. I'll circle back around to this, but I just want to mention we'll also touch on the decision by Joe Biden to run and the decision by Aaron Rodgers to run to the New York Jets. And I'll also give you a few, there were some notable losses. Again, Kim and I were talking about this, the Harry Belefonte thing. 96 years old. I mean, relevant, I think, all the way almost to the very end. I mean, Belefonte was working in the area of civil rights, right?
There he
Look
is.
at him, handsome devil. Look at him. Looks great.
He was 96. Yeah. What a life.
The well, I hadn't planned to, but we can talk about Harry Belafonte off the top if you want. I mean, he was just really a civil rights activist. Obviously he was a movie star, right? Won an Oscar, an honorary Oscar, I believe, and he made that Banana Boat song, that "Day-o,
Oh,
day-o,"
yeah.
Yeah, that's his. And that's about third world dock workers. It's not it's a fun song to sing but a brilliantly talented guy. He was born in Harlem. West Indian parents, both immigrants. His father was from Martinique, had been a cook in the Royal Navy, the British Royal Navy. His mother was a housemaid from Jamaica. She actually sent him to live with his grandmother in Jamaica from 1936 to 1939 because she was worried about him becoming a delinquent. She thought he was already becoming a delinquent. He dropped out of school in the 9th grade, enlisted in the Navy at 17, served as a munitions leader in the waning days of World War II. Wow. Can you put a picture of him back up there?
Yeah.
He was an assistant janitor working in New York in his late teens, finally found direction when he received as a tip a ticket to the American Negro Theater's production of Home is the Hunter. That play inspired him to join that theater group, where he met his lifelong friend and fellow West Indian, Sidney Poitier. Yeah. He studied drama on the GI Bill, studied at the New School. His classmates at the New School, Poitier, Marlon Brando, and Tony Curtis. Not a bad.
That's a class. Wow.
I told you my Tony Curtis story, right? I don't think I've ever told this Tony Curtis story on the air here. Or did I? I'm not going to tell it now because I'm talking about Harry Belafonte, but I'm just curious. I'll put it off to the side.
I haven't
Tony,
heard it.
Yeah, you haven't. I don't think. And Tony, you'd remember a Tony Curtis story because your name's Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
No, I've never heard this one.
Okay, I will tell that story later. It's actually a pretty good story with Tony Curtis. But anyway, Tony Curtis was a classmate, along with Poitier and Brando, of Harry Belafonte. Roles were scarce for black actors. He found regular work as a singer. His musical career would eventually encompass every form of African-American popular music, blues to gospel to hip-hop. He began as a jazz singer, backed up by the bebop titans Charlie Parker and Max Roach. But he found fame singing folk songs that he'd learned from the archives of the Library of Congress. Goes on. 2 Grammys were won for his folk recordings. Years later, in 2000, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. After Poitier, Belafonte became the only other black leading man in Hollywood in the 1950s. He starred opposite Dorothy Dandridge in the all-black musical Carmen Jones in 1954. There you see some of his civil rights work.
He's with Martin Luther King Jr. there.
I mean, he was a very high-profile civil rights activist to the very end. He gave career boosts to singer-activists of the 60s. Hugh Masekela, for example. Bob Dylan. I didn't know that. Bob Dylan first released a recording as a harmonica player on Belafonte's Midnight Special album in 1962. But he spent much of the 1960s actively engaged in the civil rights movement. And then, as you see, from 56 on, he was a close associate of Martin Luther King, whose bail he paid when King was jailed in Birmingham and whose meager preacher's salary he helped subsidize. He helped finance the freedom rides, Harry Belafonte did. Was one of the organizers of the 1963 March on Washington and helped round up Hollywood talent for that same occasion, including Marlon Brando and Charlton Heston.
There he is with the Tony Curtis.
Tony Curtis, yeah.
Yeah. And Harry Belafonte, and I forget who Tony Curtis's wife was. Oh,
Janet Leigh?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why Jamie Lee Curtis, that's why, you know. So he spent the 1970s performing around the world, seldom made movies through the 70s. He did star in 2 films directed by Poitier, the Western Buck and the Preacher and the Harlem set comedy Uptown Saturday Night. He helped hip-hop go mainstream by producing and scoring the 1984 movie Beat Street and co-produced its hit soundtrack album with Arthur Baker. Anyway, the story of Harry Belafonte is a fascinating one to me, you know. It was a story of art. It's a story of justice. It's a story of, you know, fighting for those things that you know are right, those things that have to do with humanity and humanitarianism and equal rights, and using your platform to pursue those things. He appeared in an autobiographical documentary, Sing Your Song, and wrote a memoir, My Song, in 2011. In late 2014, he appeared on the PBS series Speakeasy, interviewing Carlos Santana. He was Carlos Santana's hand-picked interviewer. And in 2015, he became one of a handful of entertainers to complete the rare EGOT Grand Slam, when he added to his Emmy, Grammy, and Tony wins an honorary Oscar. An extraordinary guy. Harry Belafonte passes away at 96. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I have news of the big snow melt, too, in California. We'll get to that. Tuesdays bring David Cay Johnston into our mix. The Pulitzer Prize winner joins us in the 11 o'clock hour. If you're on the Pacific Coast, it's 11 o'clock. If you're in another time zone, you do the arithmetic. But it's really cool that you can join us from wherever you are. We'll try to get to as much as we can. We're a completely crowdfunded show, by the way, so we live because you have been so kind to jump on our Patreon and PayPal. Those are the two easy ways to support the show on an ongoing basis. You go to themarkthompsonshow.com, and you can link through themarkthompsonshow.com to PayPal and Patreon. So thank you, those of you who have. In fact, I try to always write a note to anybody who jumps on there, and I'm going to write a note to all our Patreon supporters either later today or tomorrow. I'll let you know sort of the state of the state and what's going on. But it's really a great thrill to see the show begin to get some traction. We're at our 6 month, I think we're at our 6 month point, aren't we?
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, I believe that that's right. So, yeah, happy anniversary, kind of.
I come from regular stock.
And because we come from regular stock, we cherish all of your support. Vicky in Sausalito, my old home. Sausalito, big shout out, Vicky. Thank you for the super sticker.
Yay.
I used to live in the Banana Belt region of Sausalito, they call it, because it's warmer than Sausalito's right over the bridge from San Francisco in Marin County. And it's a beautiful, it's almost, it looks storybook. It looks almost like a Hollywood set. But it can be very cold because that wind and fog comes in, so that wet, biting cold can really affect you. But there's a part of Sausalito that's a little warmer. They call it the Banana Belt. And that's where I lived for a few years. If I'd only hung on to that house. It's a tiny house, and it's worth a fortune. You know what I mean? It's so weird how San Francisco Bay Area prices are so crazy that this house that, you know, again, it was 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, and just it was a tiny place. Nice view, I guess. But what is that related to? Do they sing the Banana Boat song there?
Harry Belafonte, and then you just talked about the Banana Belt.
No, I know, but do they sing the Banana Belt song? I get it.
The Banana Boat song and the Banana Belt.
Banana Boat, Banana Belt. Yeah,
got it?
That was, I just don't get it.
You just don't get it.
I don't.
I
don't. I'm awful. I really am awful. Remind me next hour, I'll tell that. I'll tell Tony Curtis. I'll tell the Tony Curtis story next hour, probably. Joe Biden is running. I don't think we're surprised by this, but it's always interesting to see how the announcement is made and how the official word comes down. I'll double back to Tucker in a little bit, but I thought it was worth noting that they had kind of it's a 3-minute sort of glossy, on one level, campaign announcement video that they put out. And on another level, the first half of the video is sort of the problems that America still has, you know, the problems of divisiveness, the problems of sort of a nation still searching for its soul. These are the things that were messaging points and supposedly drew Joe Biden into the race to begin with. And that's still what he ramps up for the first half of the video. And the second half of the video is, but we're making progress and we've made a difference. You have the video, Tony? Did I send it to you or not? I don't think I did. Oh, maybe I did.
I have it.
Oh, great. Sorry.
Wow.
Here it is. Here's a little bit of it, just to give you a sense. But we'll
freedom, personal freedom, is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred.
That's been the work of my first term, to fight for our democracy.
This shouldn't be a red or blue issue.
to protect our rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it. But around the country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms, cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes for the very wealthy, dictating what healthcare decisions women can make, banning books, and telling people who they can love, all while making it more difficult for you to be able to vote. When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are. The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. This is not a time to be complacent. That's why I'm running for re-election. Because I know America. I know we're good and decent people. I know we're still a country that believes in honesty and respect and treating each other with dignity. That we're a nation where we give hate no safe harbor. We believe that everyone is equal, that everyone should be given a fair shot to succeed in this country.
Thank you for choosing us.
Every generation of Americans has faced a moment when they have to defend democracy. Stand up for our personal freedom. Stand up for the right to vote and our civil rights. And this is our moment.
We, the people, will not decide. God love you.
So if you're with me, go to joebiden.com and sign up. Let's
All right.
finish this job. I know we can. Because this is the United States of America. There's nothing, simply nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
Wow.
Person, woman, man,
Yeah.
camera,
See, you could have thrown
TV.
that. You could have thrown that in.
No.
He should have done a little of the cognitive thing. Is what you're saying? Yeah.
I was a little worried at the very beginning with the doom music, the
Yeah. Well,
With
that's
the
kind of what I was
fear.
saying before. That they front load the.
yeah,
There's still a lot of bad stuff out here, right?
right.
And then they hit you halfway through with, but we're making progress, and look
Right.
what I've done. And that's sort of like the way they broke
Right,
it up.
right.
But it is scary. I agree I think that's the idea. To
Like,
show you, hey,
oh.
guys, we've caged the monster for now. But if you don't vote to reelect me, the monster's coming back. I think there's a quality of that in all of that.
Yeah, it was a well-written speech.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a marketing.
Yeah,
I'm sure, it was 11 different people went over it with drafts, and that was a produced, commercial announcement, obviously, and just in time for the announcement, my Joe Biden finger puppet arrived.
Oh,
which is,
look at you.
Yeah, very,
I
very.
think you need to take the tag off.
Yeah, I have the tag also on Kamala Harris. I don't know why I've left the tags on.
Kind of collector items, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know why. It really is. I'm. There's some. I hate to, but that's actually not a bad. Here's the thing. Kamala does not look like that. I don't think. But Joe's not anyway. But look, the two are running again. So
Yes.
yeah. All right. I started with the Kamala thing with
I didn't
Joe. With
know you were a puppeteer.
with Rothman. You can tell I'm not really a skilled puppeteer. But, Rothman always, when you mention Kamala Harris, whenever you mention Kamala Harris to John Rothman, he'll always talk, well, I know Kamala Harris. And I had Kamala Harris on my show. It was one of the first interviews. It was the very first radio interview that Kamala Harris did on my show on KGO. And so I know Kamala Harris well. And then he goes off on Kamala Harris, how much he believes in Kamala Harris or whatever. And I think she's a flawed candidate. Anyway, that became the reason that I got the Kamala Harris finger puppet. But then
Yeah.
I felt like I had to get a Joe Biden finger puppet. And then I got a bunch of others too. So eventually there'll be a finger puppet show.
Oh.
Yeah, eventually. Do I have, where am I? I have an Abe Lincoln finger puppet. Hold on a second.
Uh-oh. I think I might need some finger puppets. I don't know how you can do the show alone from your studio, although that might be more entertaining. There you go.
I have I have an Abe Lincoln finger puppet. Here's Abe Lincoln.
This is a thing with you. I had no idea.
Well, I mean, I just feel like you owe it to the presidency to have an Abe Lincoln finger puppet. And then this is the Mac Daddy finger puppet. You'll never be able to guess who it is.
Mark Twain.
Not a bad guess, but complexion. Look at the skin color.
Oh.
Frederick Douglass, everybody. Yes, it's a Frederick Douglass finger puppet. Yeah. So actually was getting the finger puppets for my friend's daughter for her birthday. And that's where it came from. So I just bought a bunch of them.
So now you have a new collection. Nice.
I do. All right, so
The Mark Thompson Show.
can I quickly hit you with some California news that I wanted to
please.
mention? We have this tremendous snowmelt, tremendous bank of water that is in the form of snow and snowpack. And so that snowmelt and that snowpack, they're going to be very relevant in the days ahead. Now we have a heat wave that is going to trigger this snowmelt to happen much more quickly than we want. And it'll cause more flooding in portions of the San Joaquin and Owens Valley. Temperatures in Central California are forecast to climb into the high 80s and mid 90s beginning tomorrow. The potential exists for some areas to approach daily records. Nighttime temperatures are also expected to be warmer than usual, around 40 degrees. That means Sierra snowmelt could start to happen 24 hours a day. The big melt is now here, said climate scientist Daniel Swain. We said there would eventually be some week between March and May when the rate of snowmelt dramatically increased, either due to a heat wave or late season warm storm. I think this is probably that week now. So the warmth, they say, will affect some of the state's deepest snowpack ever recorded. Southern Sierra still measuring 256% of normal for the date. That's about 56 inches of water contained in the snow. Many of the areas most likely to be threatened by the runoff are those that have already experienced inundations earlier this year, like the Tulare Lake Basin. There's some ranches and farmlands that are underwater there. A lot of rivers are currently really high. They might exceed flood stage later this week. The Merced River. It does look like there's a pretty good chance of there being a flood through Yosemite National Park.
Yeah.
That could happen by Thursday. The river site there is currently measuring around 7.5 feet. At 10 feet, the east end of the Yosemite Valley will begin to flood. And at 12.5 feet, major roads in the valley will be flooded and closed to traffic. They've issued a flood watch in the park from early Thursday until Tuesday morning. So this is the week where a lot of this stuff could happen. There are also flood watches up for portions of California, western Nevada also, in the eastern Sierra, including the Lake Tahoe area, the East Fork Carson River at Gardnerville. That's expected to exceed flood stage, 14 feet around Saturday morning. So this is the week a lot of that happens.
Yeah. I'll be interviewing Camille Von Canel with California Politico about this at 12:30 today.
Wow, look at you interviewing Dr.
Emil Schaffhausen.
Yes,
She's
Dr.
a
Michelle
Politico
Thousand.
reporter. It'll be good.
Very good. That'll be really cool. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but Kim McAllister sort of taken over the Nikki Maduro show.
No.
No, it's not a bad thing. Nikki is doing stuff now, working as, in a real job, as well as doing the her show. And so to continue her show and the presence there, the Nikki Maduro show, Kim is filling in because Kim is part of that show as well. And you're doing really well at it. So I think that that's really exciting that you have an exciting guest.
You're so nice.
Yeah. Anyway.
Jada had nothing to do with it.
All right. So Kim's news next. Then on the other side, I have some specific details of the Tucker Carlson divorce from Fox. Once you see these details, which have now been released, you see that indeed there was a lot going on there that had nothing to do with, again, him saying incendiary things. More to the point, the environment at his office was the thing that Murdoch had just had enough of. And he pulled him out of the game for good. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Yeah. Mark Thompson Show, yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and let us begin with, yes, the top story of the day is indeed the one Mark mentioned, that President Biden is running for re-election in 2024. President Biden releasing a video, which we saw early this morning, declaring he is formally entering the contest. The president, who turned 80 in November, has already said Vice President Kamala Harris will be running alongside of him. In Montana, lawmakers are bracing for some protests involving the first openly transgender woman that was elected to the state legislature there. This after the Missoula Democrat Zoe Zephyr said Republicans would have blood on their hands if they voted for a bill to ban gender-affirming care for minors. The Montana House Speaker labeled it hateful rhetoric and is refusing to let Zephyr speak on the floor until she apologizes.
Yeah,
Again,
that's the amazing thing. They're going after her, literally not letting her speak until she apologizes. So they've neutered her, if you will, and I mean, legislatively and in terms of her input, because of this. This really is an out and out. It seems to me a blast at the trans community, even though, obviously she's won a seat, a legitimate seat. It's really it sucks.
The voters have spoken, and just because you don't like what she says doesn't mean that you can keep her from speaking. She's a member of the legislature there. Let's move to the Sudan, because there's still trouble afoot. Of course, the U.S. embassy there had to be evacuated. The World Health Organization is now warning of a biological risk after a group in Sudan occupied a public health laboratory in the capital, Khartoum. This just days after the U.S. announced a 3-day ceasefire that was supposed to start last night. The World Health Organization's representative in Sudan called the occupation extremely dangerous because of the polio, measles, and cholera isolates in that lab.
It's unreal. This is a real story. Yeah, this is really dangerous. I mean, this is what happens when with these civil wars and any kind of military, the military is so unlike anything else in its lack of precision when it comes to conflicts in many of these zones that involve labs, other sensitive materials. In this case, you've really got potentially, this is based on published reports, you've really got potentially the release of some horribly dangerous pathogens. And again, because the military and military conflicts are notoriously inaccurate in the way they bomb, shoot, and destroy, you could have the release of these pathogens. It's really alarming. This is a big, big story.
Yeah, it's very scary, and I don't know if they can do anything to secure those isolates, so they call them.
Isolates is a ding word. Go ahead.
Take it.
Yeah.
Let's move to the woman at the center of the so-called doomsday cult trial. Allegedly looked up her kids' life insurance before the children vanished. Her name is Lori Vallow. She's accused of killing her 7 and 16-year-old and conspiring to kill her 5th husband's first wife in the Boise, Idaho trial. This week, prosecutors said an account linked to Vallow looked up the kid's life insurance and also looked up how to sell a service dog as well. So evidence in this case is mounting, so we say.
Wow. How did she kill him? What happened?
I don't know how she killed them.
Yeah.
Allegedly killed them because she's still on trial. So I don't. Yeah.
All right. God,
the grisly scenario is right there is what that is.
Yeah.
The Chevy Bolt, sayonara, sucker.
No. Say it ain't so.
Good day, sir.
Wow.
Sorry. The production of the electric Chevy Bolt and the Bolt EV will end this year. General Motors says the company will transform the Orion assembly plant to build the all-electric Chevrolet Silverado EV and the GMC Sierra EV next year.
Wow.
A new car!
Yeah, it is a new car. That is brand new. Huh?
CEO Mary Barra says this will give GM the ability to build 600,000 electric trucks every year. So we're getting away from the little electric car and we're going to the biggies.
We're going big.
That's right. Get your electric truck.
Wow.
Despite the Oakland A's planned move to Las Vegas, or Lost Wages, the Oakland Airport is moving forward with a new A's-themed sports bar and eatery. What? Why?
You just don't get it, do you?
Yeah, you really don't get it. I mean, they're gone. You may want to change the theme of the restaurant.
I'm saying, what? The Oakland Airport spokeswoman telling SF Gate the tenant is going to complete the restoration of the former Chili's restaurant site in Terminal 1. SSP America, an airport concessions operator, reached a licensing deal to feature the Oakland A's branding, a full-service restaurant part of the plan. Last week, of course, the A's signed a purchase agreement for 49 acres of land near the Las Vegas Strip. The team plans to build a $1 billion stadium in time for the 2027 season. SSP did not comment on how long the A's licensing deal will last. But they're going to build it.
That's a wild story. Well, good for them. I mean, that's
put that restaurant right up there.
The dream is still alive. We're not giving up on the dream, everybody. Yeah, but the team is not. You understand? They're not going to be in Oakland anymore. It doesn't matter.
I mean,
now let me say this in fairness. In Los Angeles, there are bars that are like 49ers themed. I can think of one on LA's West Side, and so 49ers fans in Los Angeles. And so I'm saying that, a restaurant that is themed around the A's might play to the A's audience that is still there, the A's fans that are still there. It's not.
Or
all
people
of a sudden,
might throw rotten bananas at it as they walk by in the airport. I mean,
well, yeah, I don't know. It's not completely insane. I'm taking another meeting on it, and it's not completely insane.
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But okay, I'll go with what you say. I can't believe there's 49ers restaurants in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess,
there's one I can think of, but I think there are a couple of others also. 49ers have a big fan base, and a lot of them are in LA also. So,
the Mark Thompson Show is crowdfunded.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that means we have to rely on you. And you can help keep the show going by contributing via Patreon and PayPal. And you can find the links and so much more. So much more at the Mark Thompson Show.
There really is not so much more, but you can find the links, Patreon and PayPal.
So much more. So much more. I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash it with your iron rod.
This is Mark Thompson.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
What he's got going here is a situation.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
Everything is going extremely well.
Call me a liar. Know what you call him?
You, sir, are a liar.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Liar, your pants are on fire!
told me.
Can you let him finish, sir?
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
No, no, no.
I'm going to tell you what I think.
What are the porn stars doing?
Do you have a secret now?
Doesn't anybody but a weed?
100% effective. How about that?
Say what?
And this is their new host.
There is no defense for my conduct.
I misspoke. I stand corrected.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Time's up, mother effers.
What up, everybody? It's our Tuesday show. That means David Cay Johnston, top of the hour. I'm looking forward to talking to him about all things related to politics and government. Here with Kim and Tony and you. And so I'm...
Kim, how are you?
And Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Tony has put together these shorts. That's our new thing that Tony has brought to the party. He'll take something that we've talked about. He'll take moments on the show, and he will put them out there in short form. And they
also
live
on Twitter as well.
Yeah, on Twitter, and they also live on. I put one up on Instagram. I put the one about the most recent one. My Instagram is pretty much just fun, social, not serious stuff. And so now that I begin, because I'm just trying to get the word of the show out that we're here to sort of old school platforms like Instagram. I'm not on Facebook particularly, so it would be helpful if you, the listeners and viewers, can share the show on Facebook. But anyway, so we're going to try to do some stuff in that area in the weeks ahead. But that said, Tony's created these shorts, and I'm posting them in some of these places, and they're getting traction, but sometimes you get blowback that you're not used to. You know, in my case, I'm just not used to it. I'm not used on Instagram being told, Tucker's right. You know what you're talking about. Whatever. You get the blowback. And so anyway, pretty funny though. But Tony, really great outreach, and people are discovering the show. We're closing in on 11,000 subscribers, and for us, it's a small show. That's a really that's a nice thing. I want to mention to California listeners and viewers that the Northern Lights are visible from California. In fact, I just saw this.
Is this like the world coming to an end or something, and climate change and whatever? Because has that ever even happened before?
That seems...
Google it.
Yeah, Googleable, but
They saw them from Placerville and Auburn.
That's the point. Now you can see them from places that you might not have been able to see. Chico, you have to get outside the city lights of Chico, but after you do, you can see the Northern Lights just north of Sacramento, and it's pretty spectacular. I mean, there it is. Thank you. I mean, we talked about the fact that because of solar activity, there would be an increased incidence of these phenomenon lower in latitude than you normally would find them. Normally, you have to go to northern latitudes to find the Northern Lights. That's why they're called the Northern Lights, probably. Just, it didn't occur to me that, that would be it. But because of the activity, the solar activity, and again, we gave you some details on that a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it was last week. These are more pronounced, these Northern Lights, than you'd find in an average year, and you can find them farther south than you can on an average year. So encourage you to check them out.
Pretty cool. They didn't get the green. They just kind of got the hot pink.
Yeah. You can fix that with the filters later if you're into the green. Yeah. It's all there. So
I love it. I'm bummed I didn't get to see it.
Well, I think it's still out there. I mean, it's not, it ain't over. So, throw the kids in the car and make a road trip of it. You just have to be after dark, the darker, the better, obviously. But there's that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So enjoy your Northern Lights. I will always. Oh, that's cool. Was that a? Either that's a. What is that, Tony? Some observatory, or it's a.
Looks like it.
Like a giant orange ball.
Yeah, they
I
call
like
it the
it.
giant. Yeah. Anyway, but by the way, just because it's up there and it's likely some kind of observatory station or whatever, I would mention that that's a great way to see so much in the way of celestial sights is these different observatories. And they're scattered all around all kinds of different communities. Even latching onto somebody who's got a decent-sized telescope can work. I mean, just talking about civilian. If you go out at night, they're set up in all kinds of places away from the city lights. So Northern Lights, you don't need a telescope to see. I mean, Northern Lights, that's one of the great things. In fact, a telescope is completely unnecessary. You might do better without any kind of binoculars or telescope. It's a little like going to a major concert where there's a performer on stage that does a lot of stage stuff. I told you about going to the Madonna show. My friend was friends with the guy who does all of Madonna's lighting and all of Madonna's stage stuff, okay? And I've told the story before, but the key to that show, to me, was not sitting too close because you wanted to sit back to be able to see all of that stuff that is part of the show. In addition to the performance, you've got all of these different lighting and video effects that are going on. And to really enjoy it and take it all in, you want to sit back a little bit. You don't want to sit too close. Northern Lights are sort of the same deal. You just don't need a telescope or binoculars to take them in. So anyway, they're still rocking. You can see them across California. You know, check your local listings. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
Aaron Rodgers is going to the New York Jets. He has taken the woke mob with him. Where's the woke mob? We have a woke mob.
I realize I'm in the crosshairs of the woke mob.
That's it, yeah. After 6 weeks of waiting, Aaron Rodgers is leaving behind his brilliant legacy in Green Bay and heading to the bright lights and massive expectations of New York. The Jets agreed on a deal Monday to acquire the four-time NFL MVP from the Packers. So look for Aaron Rodgers in a New York eatery near you sometime soon. Yeah, in a jet suit.
He must have had quite an epiphany when he did his 6 weeks of hibernation.
Yeah, that's right. He did the epiphany's a ding word. He did the reflection and the quiet contemplation that we all should do, maybe, Kim. I don't know that any of us are beyond quiet contemplation, you know. But that's where Aaron Rodgers is going. So let me give you a couple of details on Tucker Carlson, if I just might. Essentially, I want to give you the details that bear out, and I won't spend too long on this, but that bear out some of what we were talking about yesterday. I mean, this guy is a superstar ratings-wise. So the question became, why do you get rid of him? And from the standpoint of his relevance and why we talk about him, because he was a superstar, he was an opinion maker. He was an opinion shaper. You know, he was important and continues to be. He has a moment where he continues to be important and everybody's watching to see what his next move will be. But for Fox, there was something else going on, was my point yesterday. It's not just that he is this firebrand who says all these controversial things that they have to either be embarrassed about or pretend they didn't hear or whatever. It was a decision that came straight from Chairman Rupert Murdoch with input from board members and other Fox Corporation executives. Murdoch's son Lachlan, executive chairman of Fox Corp, and Susan Scott, chief executive of Fox News Media, made the decision Friday, late Friday, after we were already off the air, that Carlson had to go. The exit, and this is the part that is related to what we were talking about yesterday when I said it had to be something else. Carlson's exit is related to the discrimination lawsuit filed by Abby Grossberg. Thank you very much. I'll take my apology off the air. A producer, Abby Grossberg, was at Fox. She brought a discrimination lawsuit, and she was his senior executive producer, Tucker Carlson's. Grossberg was moved off Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo onto the Tucker Carlson Tonight Show. She alleged that she was bullied and subjected to anti-Semitic comments. In deposition testimony, she said she was coerced by the company lawyers to give misleading answers in the Dominion Voting System's defamation case against the network. And Tucker Carlson's departure, it is offered in a statement from Abby Grossberg's attorney. Tucker Carlson's departure from Fox News is in part an admission of the systematic lying, bullying, and conspiracy mongering claimed by our client, Abby Grossberg. Mr. Carlson and his subordinates remain individual defendants in the Southern District of New York case, and we look forward to taking their depositions under oath in the very near term. That's her attorney speaking. Murdoch, back to the decision, was also concerned about Carlson's coverage of the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. The host has promoted the conspiracy theory that it was provoked by government agents. In fact, Carlson, this you will remember, called Ray Epps, who was this dude from Arizona who was part of the storming of the Capitol but didn't enter the building, called him an FBI plant. He didn't present any evidence about the fact that Epps was an FBI plant, but that was the allegation.
So they're concerned about January 6th coverage now in April of 2023, or January 16th, rather.
No, I get it. Like, you know, a little late. But it does speak to the environment in which they were making these decisions. So, and it also speaks to the fact that Murdoch was bothered by that. Murdoch is a right-winger, okay? Yep. Murdoch is a full-on stamp his passport right-winger. He's a corporatist. He's for lower taxes. He's for less regulation, all right? The new alt-right, which is taking away your reproductive freedoms, you know, a gun to every 5-year-old, whatever, that is probably not necessarily reflective of Murdoch's positions. Although, that said, I think he kind of feels like, hey, that's just part of the package. I mean, we need to get less regulation and less taxes. So you end up with a situation with Rupert Murdoch where he's basically in Fox News Channel land. He's going to support those positions.
I mean, is it a stretch to say that Tucker Carlson was a bully and a liar on the air? So why would we be surprised if he was one off the air too, to his producer?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, in a way, it would be, you know, oh, but he's such a pussycat off the air.
No.
Yeah, I mean, there are those people and performers who crank it up on the air, and off the air, they're in their, you know,
really
they're in
nice.
their bathrobe and drinking a brandy and going, oh, it's all, you know, ha, ha, ha. It's all
Looks
part
like
of
he's the same guy on the air as he is off.
Yeah,
Look at
exactly.
that.
So, hey, that's the virtue in it all. Yeah. Anyway, it was in the shadow of the Epps thing. I mean, you know, this guy Epps got death threats and all the rest of it, that you began to see brick by brick Murdoch had enough. And then you got the texts coming out that Carlson essentially had made comments, disparaging comments about Fox News management in those texts, left evidence right there in black and white of this guy who you're already irritated with and now is beginning to push onto management. Here's one of them. We devote our lives to building an audience, and they let Chris Wallace and Leland Vittert wreck it. Leland Vittert is a reporter at Fox. So he texted in a group conversation with Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity. He texted that, right? We devoted our lives, and they let Chris Wallace and this other guy destroy it. Carlson also sent texts critical of Fox News correspondents who fact-checked the election fraud claims on the network.
God forbid, we should have some real information coming out.
Even though Carlson didn't believe the election was stolen, right? He's on record. We know that now. That was in the Dominion case. He knew it was a fraud. But he was still critical of Fox News journalists for investigating it and for fact-checking it, the fraud claims. So a lot of controversy, a lot of, I'd suggest, criticism of management, and ultimately, I think he might still be there were it not for this discrimination case. I guess that's what I was saying yesterday, and that's what I would say today. Again, brick by brick, when you add some of these things together, the case against Carlson in Murdoch's mind and Lachlan's mind, the Murdoch's son, the case was strong enough, and they'd had enough that they wanted to dump him. But when you really add that discrimination case and you throw in a dash of anti-Semitism on part of the sexism, that's all you need. And it was just too much. And Rupert said, let's let him go. I think there's also a sense, the last thing I would just say is that the Murdochs, they've built the machine of Fox News Channel, and they'll, in their mind, I think, maintain the fact that we're the machine. We're the platform. We created you. We created you, Sean Hannity. We created you, Laura Ingraham. We created you, Tucker Carlson. You have a short memory. Before you, Tucker Carlson, there was another guy. We got rid of him. He was a huge star, Bill O'Reilly. Guess what? Now he can't get arrested. All right? Good luck. You should cherish where you are. And that's the message to this whole Fox News lineup. It was the case with Megyn Kelly. What are we going to do? She's the most popular personality. She goes, makes a deal with NBC, and that was a disaster for her. And she's replaced by Laura Ingraham. No one remembers Megyn Kelly. So the Murdochs aren't even so wrong. There is a rogues gallery of personalities who can take over and sling this stuff. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Anyway, that's a little bit on the Tucker Carlson thing, but it's exactly as we had said yesterday on the show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Tony, you're the producer. What are we doing now?
Thanks, Tony.
I've got David Cay Johnston standing by. I almost hate to keep him waiting because he's the real deal. And then can I go to him and then do Kim's news after, David?
Sure. Are you okay with that, Kim?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay.
Kim, how are you?
All right. Smash the like button for the great David Cay Johnston, if you would.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
I don't know. Apparently, in the algorithms of YouTube, how many likes you have and all that sort of thing, that's a big deal. So
I did have one story that I wanted to throw out into the world before you guys get going.
All right. So this is awkward. We brought David on. I'm sorry,
I don't know
David.
if it's applicable to what you guys are talking about or will
right.
be talking about, but I don't know. Did you guys see the story? And it's on CNN today that Harlan Crow, the mega donor that provided the luxury mega yacht trips to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, actually did have business before the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That is super relevant, and I love that you've mentioned
I prefer the Walmart parking lots.
Yeah, well, maybe the Walmart parking lot is where Clarence Thomas will get the news. But yeah, it's quite relevant. So let's get into it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We bring him on now. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner, best-selling author, the co-founder of DCReport.org, a Trumpologist and a master of things involving government and taxes and the law, David Cay Johnston. Hello, sir.
Hello, Mark.
So, Kim was mentioning this situation. We'll get to Tucker Carlson in a second, maybe, and just the Fox News situation generally. I know you know a lot of those players, and meaning you know how those chess pieces move. But I wonder if you could speak, and we can just visit for a moment with to some of the revelations about the Supreme Court and the fact that Clarence Thomas's patron, this guy who takes him on vacations and buys his mom's house and still lets her live there and all this, he apparently did have considerable business before the court and interest before the court for a while.
Yeah, this was something I actually was aware of, but did not write about because it's that time of year when I have 38 papers to grade by my students at Syracuse University College of Law, and it just sucks up every moment until it's done. But not only has he directly had matters, but he is a significant funder of organizations which, like the American Enterprise Institute, don't directly have cases before the court, but file what are called amicus briefs, friend of the court briefs. And so the suggestion that there was no connection here is absurd. And here's I think the easy way to think about this. If Clarence Thomas was in the position he richly deserves, if he was a traffic court judge, would Harlan Crow have...
That's the position he richly deserves, is your point.
Yeah, he's qualified to be a traffic court judge.
Okay.
If he was in such a position, even if he was a Superior Court trial judge, would Harlan Crow have lavished millions of dollars on trips for him? And would he have bought the real estate around the home of Clarence Thomas's mother and fixed up the house and let her live rent-free? I mean, it's absurd to think that there isn't a connection here between influencing the justice and Harlan Crow's money. And the underlying problem is that the Supreme Court is not subject to the rules that every other judge in America, federal and state, is subject to. If those rules applied to the court, he would have been out of there a long time ago. Nobody would tolerate a Superior Court judge in California who did the kinds of things Clarence Thomas and his wife, who is on the payroll of other organizations for huge sums of money, have been involved in as long as he has been on the court. And under our Constitution, I don't think that there are a lot of things we can do, but Congress can pass a law that says the Supreme Court is subject to the rules that all federal judges are subject to. And then we'll see if the Supreme Court decides that it wants to say that's an invalid law.
I come from regular stock.
Yeah,
But Clarence Thomas, by the way, that little thing you just played, I mean, he had a horrible, economically, absolutely horrible upbringing. He is absolutely someone who was advantaged by affirmative action, which he hates with a passion. But, I recognize here's somebody who, did a lot with his life. He just, in theory, with that book that came out years ago about how people get promoted to one job above their competency, he just got promoted about 3 levels above his competency.
Well, I mean, I think he used race to his advantage. I mean, again, it just and normally it's a disadvantage in this country, without question, I would think. But he used race to his advantage at a certain point, and also used race to his advantage, I think, to evade the sort of real scrutiny that was warranted, given the credible reports at the time from Anita Hill of a work environment that was outrageous.
Well, little known fact, there were other women in both the Brett Kavanaugh case recently and the Clarence Thomas confirmation who were willing to come forward. And, you got to be a pretty brave woman to come forward. Look what happened to Anita Hill and how she was treated. And what benefited Clarence Thomas was the 2 people who think of themselves as good liberals, Joe Biden and Ted Kennedy, could not bring themselves to say to a black man, I'm sorry, sir, you just aren't qualified. And they also couldn't bring themselves in much earlier stage of feminism than we have now to appreciate how women like Anita Hill and the Professor Ford down at Stanford, are mistreated by men who have a sense of entitlement and power, something we're going to see played out starting today with the lawsuit being tried in New York City by E. Jean Carroll, the former Saturday Night Live writer, columnist, very influential in some areas of journalism, who says that Donald Trump raped her in the Bloomingdale's department store. Now, it's not a criminal trial, it's a civil trial, but she is not the only woman this has happened to or who says it happened to her. And the judge is allowing testimony by, among others, a woman who says that Trump did or tried to do the exact same thing at Mar-a-Lago. Male privilege, especially white male privilege, is not often challenged, and certainly not 30 years ago when Clarence Thomas was up to replace the great Thurgood Marshall on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's so right. I mean, I think you size it up perfectly. I mean, that just with the cross currents at play of, liberalism and wanting to be progressive in terms of racial disposition. I'm talking about Biden back to the Thomas, essentially his confirmation hearing was informed at the key moment by just that thing that you're talking about. And now this E. Jean Carroll thing, and then you're right. There's also celebrity involved in that. Like Trump, I think, brought to those moments. He even talked about it in that Access Hollywood thing. Like, I can do what I want. I could just grab them,
Right. And there are, I believe, more than 24 women who have made claims of Trump doing this kind of behavior. But Thomas apparently had the same sort of sense of entitlement. He was more discreet about it than Donald Trump. Not surprising given their relative power at the time in American society. But these are our core problems that are going to continue long after we're gone.
The other thing I would say, David, and ask you is, when you talk about reforms, even these modest reforms to the court, like some kind of even threadbare sort of ethical code of conduct, I'm noticing it. I mean, I think our audience is appropriately cynical on this point. That if you leave it to Congress, if it's going to get backburnered or nothing's going to happen. These institutions that are flawed, I mean, horribly flawed, they continue in America because they just get backburnered and forgotten.
Well, last night, teaching my students at Syracuse University's College of Law, we had a rather extended discussion about the lesson was about the law and accountability, everything from a jurat, that's the signature where you swear on a document like your tax return, to how, at least in theory in ancient Athens, if you misbehaved as a government official, they killed you. I can't find the evidence they actually ever finally killed somebody, but that was pretty strict accountability.
Yeah.
And the students raised questions about Clarence Thomas and the Supreme Court. And I said, well, let's not be ahistorical. The writers of our Constitution didn't put anything in there to deal with a president who would claim he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen to him, to Supreme Court justices who would be on the take because it was unimaginable to them. George Washington, our first president, wanted a piece of land in Washington, D.C. This is in one of my books. And he bid on it like everybody else. And being a rich man, he was able to win the bid. I wouldn't describe him as being crystal clear, clean, because when he was general of the armies fighting the British for our independence, he ordered at government expense a carriage for himself, took one look at it and said no, sent it back, had a second carriage built more to his specifications, and it cost the government in today's money several $1 million to pay for these carriages for him.
Wow.
What? And not unlike, the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO has a personal G5 jet there at his disposal at all times. But it just wouldn't occur to the framers of our Constitution that you'd have a Supreme Court justice who's on the take. And let's not beat around the bush about it. I mean, I believe absolutely firmly that Clarence Thomas is utterly corrupt, that the money going into his pockets in various ways, from free private jet flights to go on yacht vacations on luxury yachts to his wife's income. That's just flat out payoffs. This is bribery, and he belongs in prison. That's where he properly should be. And the Justice Department could construct a case, but it's not going to happen politically.
That's fascinating. And I mean, I think that what you've just said resonates with all of us. I mean, it's clear. I mean, my God, the guy is out and out, openly corrupt. But we learned this a lot under the last administration. But I think if you probably, knowing so much about granular aspects of history and government and this country, have seen this for years. There just wasn't the will to prosecute a case. There wasn't a will to prosecute a case against, so many of these various high-profile personas.
On the other end of this scale, Mark, I went to get coffee one day with a Justice Department lawyer, just ordinary level person. And we're standing in line at the coffee place in D.C., and I said, put them both on mine. He goes, no, you can't do that. And the clerk had already done that. And we had to make everybody wait in line while the clerk undid the transaction, and then we each paid for our coffee. I've gone to lunches with IRS and Justice Department and other executive officials in several administrations, Republican and Democrat. Same thing, no, you can't. And I'd say, well, listen, we're going to have lunch again. I'll buy lunch this week. You buy it next time. No, can't do that. And then you look at Clarence Thomas and go, this is wrong. And if you don't know it's wrong, you don't belong even as the judge of a traffic court.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm reminded that I was a friend with someone who was in the cabinet of the Obama administration. And he told me, we were talking about, it's always just that thing you're talking about. We're talking about something. And he said, Mark, they don't want even the appearance of anything weird going on, even the appearance of corruption.
That's the judicial standard. Right. For recusal is the appearance of impropriety, not actual impropriety. And it's important to have that because many times there's no impropriety, but nonetheless, you recuse yourself, you remove yourself from the case because people who don't know all the facts would perceive it reasonably to be improper.
This is a question from Spencer. Can we get rid of this Kaczmarek judge? That's the guy from Texas, of course.
Right. Well, there have been 20 impeachments. Congress has, this is another thing I was teaching last night about accountability. Under the Constitution, the House has the sole power to impeach, that is, accuse. The Senate, which requires 2/3 majority vote or 67 senators, has the sole power to remove from office. There have been successful impeachments. A federal judge who during the Civil War literally used his position as a federal judge to wage war on the United States of America. There have been corrupt judges, but the 4 presidential pardons, Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and the 2 Trump ones, were never going to result in a conviction because this is a political process and the Congress was very narrowly and evenly divided. So technically, yes, what should have happened is blocking him from getting appointed in the first place. And secondly, what's called forum shopping. He is the only judge in the town he's in, the district he's in Texas. So the case in which Judge Kaczmarek said mifepristone was not properly approved and it's dangerous, which is an astonishing finding given that it's been 23 years and it's much safer to have an abortion with mifepristone than to go to childbirth. The organization that brought the case was created after the Dobbs decision last year that undid Roe. It was brought by doctors who said they were wrong. Well, right there are the grounds on standing. The Supreme Court could have thrown this out if it wanted to, because how is a doctor who has the option to prescribe or not prescribe a drug somehow turned into a person with standing to sue over the safety of that drug? And if this decision stands, it's been sent back to the lower courts. But if it stands, the approval of every judge, every drug out there, whether it's amoxicillin for kids who have an infection, Viagra for older guys, whatever it is, birth control pills, they are all now subject to litigation. And that gets us away from science-based administration of laws about these very technical issues involving biology and medicine.
That's exactly right. That the notion that you have this judge, I don't care who it is. Let's take this guy's clearly, he's so agenda driven. He's a jihadist, I think. But the idea somehow that you have specialists who are doctors, many of them, they examine rigorous testing. Already, there are problems with the FDA. We've talked about regulatory capture before,
Sure.
the FDA and many other government agencies. So there are already issues there, but at least you have the institution set up to look over peer-reviewed research and this sort of thing. The idea somehow that then some judge comes along who's agenda-driven and he can Bigfoot everything, you're right. It makes these institutions, which, again, as a government, I think we've labored in America to make them as rigorous as we can, given all of the cross-currents. It makes them essentially irrelevant.
I want to be very clear. I'm not arguing the way the FDA operates is the best way it should. You'll see advertised on TV a drug right now. I just can't remember the exact name of it, but it's heavily advertised on TV because it's an incredibly profitable drug for the manufacturer. It turns out it's supposed to prevent heart attacks in people who have diabetes. It turns out that 1,000 people would have to take this drug for 3 years to prevent one heart attack. That's not a death because all heart attacks aren't fatal. But that means 3,000 years of buying this drug to prevent one heart attack. Now, maybe we should approve drugs that are like that, but don't you think the TV ad, instead of saying, oh, if you take this drug, your nose will fall off, your hair will fall out, you'll be sick to your stomach, ought to also have a disclaimer that says, and by the way, you'd have to take this drug for the equivalent of 3,000 years for it to make it useful in preventing a heart attack.
All right, David Cay Johnston, let me ask you. I've reviewed, first sort of forecast what I thought the reasons were behind the dumping of Tucker Carlson. This is distinct from the Don Lemon thing. These figures are loom large in the media landscape, and that's why I think they deserve a moment. But yeah. Carlson really looms large. I mean, that's why I think he's in a completely distinct category. So this guy who was a firebrand for Fox News Channel said a lot of controversial things. That certainly can't be something that Fox had a problem with. Anyway, you know what happened. He's dumped by the Murdochs. I'm just saying that I reviewed a lot of that, and I thought that it was related to the discrimination case that was coming up. It had to be something else, is my point, rather than a lot of these incendiary remarks he made. I think I've been proven out by the latest reporting. But I'm curious not only about that and your take on it, but also what you feel the next moves are, both for Fox and in the political discourse that we find ourselves drawn to and oftentimes defined by these cable channels.
Well, so let me give a little context to this, and if I lose my way, Mark, call me back in on it.
All right.
You have to look at Tucker Carlson in terms of how he grew up. His father, Dick Carlson, was once an anchor in San Francisco at KGO TV, not radio, where you were, that they had to change the station to sports betting to get you off the air.
Yeah. Oh my God.
If you go read the Wikipedia entry on Dick Carlson, you will see someone whose entire life is just is slime covered from beginning to all the way. He's still alive. He's 80 some years old. But and so it shouldn't surprise people that Tucker Carlson is a guy who has no allegiance to anything but his own ego. As you pointed out before I was on, Fox got rid of Bill O'Reilly. Gee, they replaced him. They got Tucker Carlson. They got rid of Megyn Kelly and replaced with Laura Ingraham. They will replace successfully, for their purposes, Tucker Carlson with someone else who has no qualms about lying to an audience that wants to be lied to, that does not want to hear the truth. The truth is anathema. This is people my age are the audience of Fox, and they are people who are psychologically children. They want what they wish to be true, and they are not willing to deal with facts that they don't like. Now, even if every advertiser abandons the nighttime shows at Fox, they'll do just fine because People then watch other shows where there are advertisers and they get cable TV money. And Fox, no doubt, in the next rounds of negotiations will demand bigger payments from Spectrum and SBC Global and the other cable operators in the country, even as their audience shrinks. And they will find ways to monetize people who use the internet to get Fox directly. We can't do anything about Fox because it's cable. And I say that as the only journalist in the history of this country who caused a broadcast chain to shut down and go out of business because of fake news. Took 12 years from when I broke the story 50 years ago until it happened, but it happened. And Fox being on cable, they're not subject to any kind of outside governmental regulation on their behavior, but they are subject to private regulation. Tucker Carlson's abrupt departure, very likely tied to the personal litigation that was going to be troublesome. Remember, they got rid of Roger Ailes, who created Fox, who was an absolute genius at manipulating people. I mean, you really got to admire him. He understood how to use data to maximize the audience. A friend of mine used to be a host on Fox. She also had been a host on MSNBC. And I asked her, and she'd been at ABC's Good Morning America. And I said, well, what was the difference at Fox? And she said, oh, instead of giving me a clothing allowance and money for makeup, Roger Ailes hired someone to teach me how to dress, the principles of how with my figure and my looks I should dress, and hired a makeup artist to explain to me the ways that I should do makeup. The others just, said, here, there's a makeup person. And so you got to respect the business genius of these people. But at the end of the day, what's going on at Fox is actually very simple. It is Rupert and his son Lachlan, who's probably worse than Rupert in terms of public policy, defending the family. Everybody else is hired help. And as you know, Mark, better than anybody else, everyone who has a broadcasting show, a cable TV show, sooner or later, you get canceled.
That's so right.
Grey's Anatomy and Law and Order SVU, they're going to stop someday.
Yeah. It's funny. I was said on Twitter when the news first broke, I thought it was a line from Citizen Kane, they came for, as it does for all men, cancellation
I
came.
think that is the line in Citizen Kane.
Yeah. As it does for all men, death came to Charles Foster Kane. Indeed, you're right. This cancellation, though, at the very top of the game, when you pull a pitcher out of a game who's throwing that kind of heat and doing that well, it has to be about other things, and now all the other things are coming to light.
Absolutely, and in this case, it's not like the pitcher you pull because you're going to need them in 2 days, and you've said they've thrown enough pitches and the arm needs the rest. It's about something else. And by the way, don't worry for Tucker Carlson. He's a triple trust fund boy. He's made a fortune. The number one host on cable TV for as long as he's been at Fox, after he was at CNN, after he was at MSNBC. So he tried out being a middle of the roader. He tried out being a liberal. He's going to show up somewhere else with a tiny audience. But Lee Kopp down below is quite right. The loudest voice in the room very much tells the origin story in riveting detail.
Yeah. The Carlson thing, just for those who are filling out their scorecards, he was making $20 million a year from Fox.
Do we know that, or it was reported to be 20?
That was I read that's what he was making. I'm sorry.
I think it's a absolutely reasonable number. Keith Olbermann was getting at MSNBC $15 million a year when Comcast bought MSNBC and took over all of NBC from General Electric. And as I predicted at the time, before the actual turnover took place, they would get rid of Keith, and they paid him his entire future income and waived the you can't go on the air somewhere else.
Wow.
Which tells you how much the extraordinarily conservative but much more thoughtful people at Comcast in Philadelphia are than Rupert Murdoch, who is very much to the far right and a totally commercial animal. If it made more money for Fox to be liberal, he would do that tomorrow, but reckless. And the Comcast people are not reckless.
The future for Tucker Carlson politically, I mean, do you see him as a viable presidential candidate? I mention this because, look, I mean, our bar for presidential candidates, I think, is pretty low. I mean, the last guy was essentially a con artist and a game show host.
Right. Tucker Carlson has very clear presidential ambitions. The problem is his audience is a very small audience. I mean, even his number one cable TV show host, his audience is at the peak about $3 million, and 3 million people. And 3 million people is less than 1% of the U.S. population. It's 1.5% of the adult population. And he's not in tune with where the times are going. We just had school board elections in Illinois. Illinois is a real heartland state, especially when you get outside Chicago. There's an old song when I was a student at the University of Chicago. Right outside Chicago, there's a place called Illinois. And in these school board elections, which are supposedly nonpartisan, you had people running from Moms for Liberty, a super right-wing, no sex ed, let's have guns in the school sort of group, and people who declared their intention to support very right-wing Republican principles. They were vanquished at the polls, absolutely vanquished. And so one of the phrases I've been using is as follows: just let the Republicans be Republicans. Their positions on abortion, a majority of Republicans don't agree with them. Their positions on assault rifles, a majority of Republicans and a majority of gun owners don't agree with them. And just let them be. We have elections coming up in 18 months. And well, in select locations like the gerrymandered district that Marjorie Taylor Greene represents in Georgia, they will do well. Overall, nationally, they're going to do horribly.
The idea
Maybe
somehow
we'll get a real Republican Party back at some point.
Yeah, well, that's the thing when you talk about Republicans and you talk about, I think Democrats and Republicans to a person always are different animals. But, that said, you're right. This is sort of a bridge too far for many people who are, in quotes, Republicans or independents. My question is, as we finish up, with the approval ratings and the general polling around Biden, this is on the day that he announces his candidacy, being so low, whether or not, this is going to be a race to the bottom and the one who sinks, the lowest will lose, but it's not going to be much of a win. This is an election, I think, that is characterized by unlikable figures from the standpoint of political viability. It's so far, anyway.
Well, the most important thing to watch for in terms of the election in 18 months is the economy. V.O. Key, the great University of Michigan political scientist's last book came out after he died, came out in 1962. And what he found still holds true. In presidential elections, Americans vote their pocketbook. If the economy is doing well or they perceive that it will do better under a particular candidate, that's who they vote for. So, I interviewed a man I've known for many years recently, again, about how conservatives with a minority in this country and Republicans with a minority win elections. And I'm sorry, his name just went out of my head, the anti-tax guy, Grover Norquist. Norquist. And Grover said to me, he said, well, I get 25 people in the room. And there's one guy who has the nuttiest views you've ever heard on free trade. And the next guy, something else. And he says, what I do is I do a Venn diagram and I find the place where all 25 people in the room are in agreement. And then we throw everything else out and we get them to work on that one issue. And the Democrats haven't learned that lesson. They just haven't learned it. They're not good communicators. They're masters at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. But watch the economy. If the Fed overreacts, as it has every time I can remember in my lifetime, in trying to slow down inflation and puts us into a recession, things may not go so well. If the election is about children and guns at school and about access to abortion and the other things that clearly will be taken away if someone like Donald Trump gets to the White House or Ron DeSantis, which is birth control, then
Democrats will do better.
That will be the determining factor if it isn't economics. Otherwise, we have an incumbent president who's created 13 million jobs in 2 years and a month, whereas Donald Trump in 3 years created 5 million. Fewer jobs, by the way, per month on average before the pandemic than Barack Obama after the Great Recession ended, something many people don't seem to realize, that Trump turned in inferior performance. At DC Report, where we repeatedly analyzed the economic data, we gave him a grade of C, and I think at one point C minus. But
this goes to your point about messaging, though, like that, and that has to be recapitulated. It has to be messaged effectively, and then it can get squeezed out, that messaging, by other messaging, as you say, economic issues. And we've got to wrap up, but I want to push this off on the agenda for next time. I mean, might Republican leadership really let us careen off the cliff of the budget? I mean,
no, at the end of the day, we will get an increase in the debt limit, a law that is gratuitous and not needed. It's a product of World War I politics, because if we default on the debt, that is the number one thing we could do to help China vanquish us economically and become the superpower of the future. And there are going to be enough grown-ups in the Republican Party in the House that they won't let this happen. And remember, the Republicans only control the House, and only by a few votes. So it's not going to happen. But right now, Kevin McCarthy is the most effective agent Beijing has in telling the world, you can't trust the Americans, their system doesn't work. And he wants very much to make the renminbi, the global reserve currency, which would be devastating to our economy and our influence around the world and to freedom, because, after all, China is a dictatorship, a brutal, vicious dictatorship with no human rights.
He is the Pulitzer Prize winner, 4-time best-selling author, co-founder of DCReport.org. Much to talk about. David, thank you. We'll talk next week. David Cay Johnston, everybody. Yeah.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Always good stuff from David Cay Johnston. I will tell you, coming up, something's happening in the city that is a sign of the times. I'll get to that, in the city of San Francisco. And you may be aware of it, you may not be, but you'll go, oh yeah, I'm not surprised when I tell you. Also, the opioid policy being influenced by the Sackler family. If you saw that story, but it's absolutely unreal. I've got some law and disorder that includes Instacart and the dangers of being a delivery driver when you're driving for Instacart. And I do have the drug-laced cheesecake story. Did you ever do that, Kim? The it seems familiar to me, even as I look at it. But I'm wondering if it's familiar because I heard it from you, or just because I was reviewing it for things that might be included in the show. So
it's the drug-laced cheesecake, and I have not done that story.
All right. Well, then I'm looking forward to regaling you with details. And regaling you would be, regaling. I think anathema was something that David Cay Johnston said, which was a ding.
I was surprised you didn't ding it right upon arrival.
I did actually come close to dinging it, but sometimes I feel like David, there's a certain sanctity, and I don't want to necessarily break it. Although I have given him a ding before in the middle of conversation, and he usually acknowledges that's a ding word. In fact, I think he was out in front on a couple of ding words, so meaning he dinged his own ding, if you will, which is always fun. So smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Give me a thumbs up. That's all. Let's give a man a thumbs up. That's all I'm asking for. Gratuitous. You're right. Gratuitous was the other one. Thank you, Julie. Gratuitous was the ding word I was thinking of. He used anathema and he used gratuitous. And then whatever other one we did. Anyway, smash the like button. Kim's news, then some of those stories as we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Former President Trump's case against the columnist who accused him of raping her in a Manhattan department store begins today. And here is a picture of E. Jean Carroll. She's the accuser in this case. She said Trump assaulted her in a dressing room in the 90s. Trump, of course, denying that, saying Carroll is not his type. According to CNN, Trump probably will not appear in court since it's a civil battery and defamation case.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as Mark had mentioned at the start of the show, Grammy Award-winning singer and civil rights activist Harry Belefonte has died. The king of Calypso died of congestive heart failure at the age of 96. He was best known for popularizing Caribbean folk songs or calypsos with an international audience in the 50s. I would say international audience for decades. The Senate set to vote on the Equal Rights Amendment this week. This involves Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying the ERA and its protections are now more critical than they ever have been, following the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade and efforts to limit access to the abortion pill mifepristone. The ERA guarantees equal rights under the law regardless of sex or gender.
Who is that in the middle of that picture, everyone? Does everybody recognize that woman, the older lady with the ERA yes sign? Okay, we don't have to do it. So, yeah, anybody in the chat want to take a guess as to who that is? She was a very influential and high-profile activist. She was a politician, leader in the women's movement. There it is. Bella, says Debbie. Bella Abzug, says Vicky and Karen. Yeah.
I'm
Bella
so proud of you guys for
Abzug.
knowing
That's
that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I picked this picture because I like the woman, the girl next to her, where saying California against ray guns.
Yeah.
You see that?
It's Ray Gun. You know, it's a play on Ronald Reagan, of course.
Yeah.
But I really love that that Bella Abzug is there because she was really, like a labor rights, tenant rights, civil liberties person. She's really an activist with a distinguished career. As I say, in all of those various areas, and she ran for Senate, and
Well, look at you teaching us a little something today.
Well, there we are. But very cool, nice job, Kim, with grabbing a good pick. But look, I mean, it's weird that all that progress was made, and then we find ourselves where we are when it comes to women's rights, and
Yes, it's a disappointment.
Yeah, exactly.
Let us move to San Francisco, where San Francisco-based First Republic is cutting now up to 25% of its staff. They are also cutting executive pay and consolidating their corporate office space. This after customers pulled out $102 billion when the bank's stability was questioned. And there are other questions about maybe a sale, something else. We'll see what happens with First Republic Bank. Meanwhile, people feel, I guess, a little pinched. The home prices rising slightly for the first time in 8 months. The latest S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller 20 price index, that's a mouthful, rose 0.1% in February compared to the previous month. A combination of low inventory and high demand pushed home prices up overall across the country.
And the cost of money is just so high.
Yeah,
so you got home prices going up and your ability to get a loan, that is going down, right? Just because, you need a loan that's so
expensive,
substantial when it comes to. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
This guy, a California man being charged with impersonating a doctor after treating thousands of patients over the years.
Well, I have to say, just based on the picture, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's the kind of guy who I'd like to be treated by if I have to be treated by an impersonator. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Friendly enough.
Yeah, it looks like he has a nice manner, nice smile. Mr. Thompson, I've looked at your labs. Yeah.
His name is Stephen Gevorkian. He owns Pathways Medical in North Hollywood.
Sure,
it's
he
a
does.
business that does blood tests, advises patients, offers treatments
good.
for conditions that include cancer, according to prosecutors. They said an undercover agent investigated Gevorkian last year and received a consultation from him in which he allegedly failed to acknowledge abnormal levels of a hormone that could have indicated a serious medical condition. The Los Angeles District Attorney says 44-year-old Gevorkian practiced medicine without a license for several years, right there in North Hollywood.
That is scary. My favorite fake doctor is Dr. Emil Show. Yeah.
Emil.
Yes. That's right. That's my favorite fake doctor. But this guy would be in second position. So his name is Gevorkian. Is that what you said?
Yeah, like the other Gevorkian.
Like the other one is Kevorkian.
Yeah. It's Kevorkian.
Yeah.
This is with a G. Gevorkian.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Speaking of health concerns, scientists think they found a link between diet and autoimmune diseases. Researchers in Oklahoma say it could be a key factor in preventing multiple sclerosis. They found, they say, that a high-fat, low-carb, and fiber-enriched diet prevented the onset of MS symptoms in mice. So clearly more studies need to be done on that.
That's terrific.
And Mattel is introducing the very first
White Power Barbie, is that?
No, you're going to feel really bad in a minute.
It was a
You're going to
guess.
feel really bad, okay? I'm just saying. It's a first for the Barbie doll. The toy maker unveiled the first Barbie doll to represent a person with Down syndrome.
Okay, I do feel bad. You're
I'm
right.
telling you.
Oh, my God.
I know.
There's never been anything like this.
Don't try to make it better with a drop.
Just let him have his moment.
Can you let him finish, sir?
I want to apologize to...
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Exactly.
It is
my bad.
My bad. I'm sorry.
All right. Yeah.
It's part of the Barbie Fashionistas line, which has previously featured dolls with a prosthetic leg and hearing aids. Mattel worked with the National Down Syndrome Society to create this doll to ensure accurate representation. The president and the CEO of the NDSS says it means so much for their community, who for the first time can play with a Barbie doll that looks like them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is really very nice then.
Everything is going extremely well.
Yes.
Good going, Thompson. Mark Thompson Show is crowdfunded. This means that we have to rely on you. So you can help keep the show going by contributing via Patreon or PayPal. You can find the links and so very much more at themarkthompsonshow.com. I'm Kim McAllister.
The links are all you need, though. Yeah.
It's a lot more.
Okay. All right.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this?
We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Oh, this is this is the relaxation music. Sometimes when I need a moment, I put it on. If you can get into your zen, get into your place, take your mind away from the politics of the day. Take your politics and put them to the politic-to-tick-tixy place. And just get into the calmness. Yes.
Listen to me. I don't want to hear you.
It's not very zen of you, but deep breaths. In with the good and out with the stuff that's not so good.
You know what, pal? You created havoc and chaos.
Yeah, if you can just put that stuff off to the side for a moment. and just live in the peacefulness.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
You cannot say you love your country.
I love my country. I want to take a moment out to relax.
Where are my weed smokers down?
Yes.
Morning.
What's a guilty pleasure you have?
In through your nose and out through your ears. Ah, yes. Thank you. It was a group meditation. I feel it went very well.
It was great. I loved it.
Exactly. Thank you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I need moments like that. That's all. Something to recalibrate, you know, as the world around you seems to be becoming unraveled. It's good to recalibrate. Don't know if you've noticed, but recalibration is my recommendation.
You should ding recalibration.
Recalibration gets a ding.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
I promised you the story out of San Francisco. Gorgeous city, magnificent place. Couple of growing pains recently with the lawlessness that has affected certain areas, but maybe too much is made of some of that. Maybe not enough is made of it in other ways. Target in San Francisco is locking their entire product range behind security glass.
What?
Crime is spiraling out of control, Target says.
What product range? What do you mean?
All of their products.
Everything?
If you want something, it's going to be... Look, there it is. We're showing it to you right now.
Like
this
cookies
is what
even?
Target...
What?
I mean, everything?
Not the cookies! You're telling me the cookies?
How would you handle this?
They're
We could
locking
try
up
ignoring it, sir.
everything?
Oh,
You have to shop with a person that has the keys? How does that work?
yeah. You have to decide what you want, and then I guess they get it out for you. A Target spokesperson says, like other retailers, organized retail crime is a concern across our business. We're taking protective measures and proactive measures to keep our teams and guests safe while deterring and preventing theft. These mitigation efforts include hiring additional security guards, adding third-party guard services at select locations, and using new technologies and tools to protect merchandise from being stolen. Especially, they say, the cookies.
Wow.
Yes. Gotta hide the cookies. Who knew? In 2021, retailers saw a 27% increase in theft carried out by organized criminal rings. They invested more money in safety, security measures to protect employees, customers, and merchandise then. Then, of course, the Whole Foods closing in San Francisco, their flagship store. It followed Walgreens shutting down, although we told you that was not really due to theft, although they claimed it was due to theft at the time. It was really just a cover story. But they, in Target land, have had enough. So the...
I don't know how you even shop. I'm perplexed. I don't know how you shop this way. I mean, did they lock up all the clothing area? Like everything in the whole place is just behind glass now. And so how do you have to shop with an attendant? How does this even work?
You know, this is the kind of journalism that you should do for this show. You got to get out there. Got to get in the car,
Target in the
leave
city,
your
huh?
little small town of Petaluma where everything's so great. I'll pay for the bridge toll, go down into the city, and you need to investigate this. And it would be nice, just saying, if you would shoot some video for us so that we could enjoy the fruits of your journalism. That's all. Now, if somebody else wants to do it, that's okay too. somebody else wants to go to that Target in San Francisco and experience it for us, we'll put you on. We'll send you a link. We'd love to talk to you about it. And then if you shoot some video, that'd be great too. And my point is Kim's question, which is, how do you shop when everything's behind security glass?
Mary
Now,
Jo Jim Bob says maybe if we started locking up the thieves, that might actually be, better than locking up the merchandise.
no, you don't need to pitch it to me, baby. You know, I'm a law and order lib. I am for a tough law and order. How about the New York City woman sentenced to 21 years for attempting to murder a friend with drug-laced cheesecake? And again, I don't want to be murdered, but if I've got to go down, cheesecake, solid. Solid. Yeah. Poison me with your best cheesecake. Victoria Nasirova, 47. She's the one who hatched the cheesecake murder conspiracy.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
She brought a slice of cheesecake laced with a highly potent sedative to her friend. The friend ate it, felt sick, passed out. Her last memory was seeing Nasirova walking around her room. The next day, the woman was found unconscious in bed, surrounded by pills, as if she'd attempted to kill herself.
Not crumbs of cheesecake?
Covering the cheesecake trail with the pills.
Uh-huh.
Drug testing by federal law enforcement agents later found that the pills and the cheesecake residue contained the sedative phenazepam. When she got home, the woman also found her passport, work authorization card, and other valuables worth more than $3,000. They were missing from her home. Nasirova laced a slice of cheesecake with a deadly drug so she could steal her unsuspecting victim's most valuable possession, her identity.
I guess they looked a little bit like each other.
Well, they're not going to be looking at each other for a long time. Nasirova sentenced to 21 years in prison. So that's a tough one.
Good day, sir.
Exactly.
Nasirova yelled, "F you!" at the judge after she was slapped with the sentence.
Sayonara, sucker.
Yeah, that's what he said back. Sayonara, sucker. Yeah. This is pretty wild, guys. A dude shoots at two Instacart delivery workers who went to the wrong house. I mean, this business of going to the wrong house is a super dangerous thing in this country.
It's like a make a mistake in America and you could wind up with a bullet wound.
And increasingly, it's the thing, you've got the gun, so you kind of just want to use it. And here's what happened. Guy in South Florida shoots at the car of two people who drove onto his property after they got lost. They try to drop off an Instacart order, according to cops. And one bullet hit the car and one bullet hit a tire. The resident said that he fired after the car ran over his foot. 19-year-old Waldus Thomas Jr., 18-year-old Diamond Harley Darville were attempting to deliver. Diamond Harley Darville sounds like
That's
a name out of a.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a dingable name.
Yep.
Attempting to deliver an Instacart grocery order. Were having trouble locating the address of the person who placed the order. They mistakenly pulled their car onto the property of Antonio Cacavalli, 43. This is about 20 miles northwest of Miami. It's a little on the violent side, which is why we didn't do it for Friday Fabulous Florida. But I don't know, could have done probably and had a life there. Cacavalli's 12-year-old son approached them, and they said they tried to reverse out of the property and struck a boulder.
Ooh.
They said that was when Cacavalli then aggressively approached the vehicle and grabbed at the driver's side window. Then one of them began driving the gray Honda Civic away when they heard 3 gunshots as they exited the property. Cacavalli told investigators that when he saw a vehicle on his property, he asked his son to tell the occupants to leave. He heard his son calling for help, ran to his aid, and that's when he said the vehicle was driving erratically. The car reversed, sideswiped him, ran over his right foot, he said. And that's when he drew his Smith & Wesson Shield handgun and fired several shots toward the tires. I had seen him pull out a gun, and that's when I said, we got to go. We got to go. I was scared. I'm not going to lie. Of course, this is not the case, but it sounds similar to the case with Kalen Gillis, the 20-year-old who, they went up that driveway in rural New York, and the homeowner opened fire. This is a different case of, again,
well, then you had the kid on the porch, the 16-year-old on the porch. Then you had the basketball rolling into the wrong driveway with the child that chased the ball and that opened fire with it. And then, the cheerleader got into the wrong car on accident and was saying, I'm sorry, oops, my bad, when all of a sudden the guy inside opens fire. These accidents that have happened to so many people, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've gone to the wrong car for a second, grab the handle and go, oh, not my car.
Sure.
I mean, now you could get shot for such a thing.
It's true. It's true. I mean, it really is a sense of kind of just everything becoming so unhinged. There's no sort of routine interaction or mistake with anyone. Everything has to be escalated to, DEFCON 1.
Right.
That's our that's Law and Disorder for
Tune
today.
in again next time for more Law and Disorder on the Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Yeah, but Kim's right. It's just it's an epidemic. It's the real epidemic. Tomorrow, I want to mention that Buzzy Cohen is going to be here, who is the make sure that that's right before I promise it to you. No, maybe not.
No?
Oh, Buzzy, I'm sorry. It'll be Thursday. Buzzy's here. Excuse me.
Lying liars who lie.
Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry. But
My bad. I'm sorry.
Buzzy comes here on Thursday, and then the crown and the coronation will be discussed by Bean Baxter, the Brit come to America broadcaster who I used to work with, and he's also a huge Taylor Swift fan. But we're really bringing him in to discuss the coronation. We'll ask him maybe a Taylor Swift question or two. But Buzzy, I would say, is the headliner. I love Bean, but I'm going to say it's Buzzy and then Bean. But that's not till Thursday. So, yeah, Buzzy from Jeopardy, exactly. Buzzy is the most dapper Jeopardy winner ever, says John. That is absolutely true. He's also immensely talented, and I'm glad that he has a life within the Jeopardy ecosphere, because right now he'll share with you this new podcast he's doing and a bunch of other stuff. Buzzy's so talented. There's just no keeping him down. So let's acknowledge a couple of people today. Tony, what do you think? Vicky and Sausalito, thank you.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Yeah, thank you for the super sticker, Vicky. Kevin Hobbs, Hall of Fame.
Thanks, Tony.
No,
Threes across the board.
I'm not going to cry. That's it, exactly. I'm not going to cry, but Kevin Hobbs could get me to cry. He is Hall of Fame. He and Andreas, I think. But also, I have to say, there are Patreon and PayPal people. You see their names in big letters at the scroll. You're about to see them in like about 90 seconds. Those people, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry when I talk about them, but I do know them and adore them and appreciate them. So those guys, too, I would say are Hall of Famers. Pamela Kirby, thank you for $5. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Wes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. For Kim's Bridge Toll to check out the Target, there's $10 from RG Dunn.
Thank you so much.
And Kim, you need to get on that Target story, I believe.
Okay.
Now, Gail Guthrie got my order from Tenuta Vineyard, she says.
Yeah, right on.
6 bottles of the Why Are You Yelling Red. Had it delivered to work.
Why are you yelling?
Yeah, that's the best place for wine. Can't wait to try some. Rich at the winery was so nice. Cheers. Yeah.
Why are you yelling?
The one thing that you do hear about the Tenuta people is how sort of transcendentally welcoming they are and also accommodating. The other thing, though, you hear that about the Red Jack people. You can read about, like in all of these Yelp reviews and stuff, about how the Red Jack Saloon in San Francisco is just populated with this energy that is all about welcoming and being helpful. So the Red Jack, as you know, is our big shout out to the Red Jack people. That's our spot. So, Andreas, come on, Andreas.
Big shout
Big shout out for $20. Great to have him back after such a brutal period in Andreas's life. We've all sort of become extended family, and it's really it's a great thing that you're back in this community and that you continue to support us. Thank you, Andreas.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
I'm close to it, though. I am close to it. Andreas with another 20. He really gets it going. I give you the thank you. Yeah. Mark for president, Andreas, his running mate. I like it. You know what, Andreas, we get tired of going out there on the stump all the time. You know, I think the reality is we would wage a brave media campaign, but I don't want to go out and actually be on the stump place to place. But if I were going to go out and be on the stump place to place, I'd like to do it with Andreas.
Big shout out.
Yeah, he's the guy. And Recalibration gets a $10 ding from Andreas. Thank you. Look at all the love Andreas gets in the chat. Vicky and Sausalito, another great show, Mark. Thank you, Vicky.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a thank you so much. And a big Dan Escher shout out. So, very, very cool. Guys, you've all been so supportive. Elite group of fans, indeed. Mark T. Elites, led by Ms. Jones. By the way, all the merch that we find ourselves surrounded by, you can get at getmarkmerch.com, and I have a picture, actually a series of pictures of a traveler who's on a cruise right now and took merch with them and has pictures of our merch in various locations on the cruise. It's pretty fun.
That's
we'll
cool.
share that with you tomorrow. Yeah, it's really great. So we'll get that going tomorrow. Wednesday is typically our Rothman Day. We will slide someone special in place of Rothman tomorrow. Glad we could work through the Tucker stuff and through some Law and Disorder. And
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Looking forward to tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Watch Kim over on Nikki's channel next. Till then, and tomorrow. Bye-bye.